What's up, Mets Nation? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another True Mets Talk pregame right here on the True Mets Talk podcast. We are going over some things to watch out for in this evening's ball game as spring training rolls on between the New York Mets and the Miami Marlins, as well as going over some of the latest Mets news and notes as opening day creeps up closer and closer, just about 3.5 weeks away. Before we fully get into this video, please do smash those thumbs up buttons, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and also drop your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section down below. We are also going live for the post game right after the final out is recorded tonight, and we are going to give you the post game recap and analysis, especially now that Kodai Senga is back. Yes, it is going to be his first start of the spring. Kodai Senga is scheduled to go 1 inning, as David Peterson is going to relieve him in the second inning. At least that's what the plan is. And again, we'll get into that here in the next slide as we go over the starting pitching, or the pitching in general, as well as some latest news and updates. But this is what Carlos Mendoza is rolling with in terms of the lineup tonight versus the Miami Marlins. Again, it's an unusual start time, 6:10 p.m. Standard Time, Eastern Standard Time, I should say. Okay, Francisco Lindor batting first, batting leadoff, playing shortstop. Juan Soto batting second, playing right field, and Pete Alonso batting third, playing first base. Please stop me if you've seen this combination before. This seems to be the sweet spot and Carlos Mendoza's comfortable spot in terms of his top three in the lineup. And I would be absolutely shocked if we get to opening day on March 27th in Houston and we see anything different than what we see on this screen in terms of the top three. Now, clearly, Brandon Nimmo is not playing today, so that leaves Mark Vientos, who is batting cleanup, playing third base right there to take that cleanup spot. But we've seen, especially in Brandon Nimmo's first spring training outing, that he was batting cleanup and Mark Vientos was batting fifth. So the 4-5 definitely is up for interpretation, and that is going to shake out how it's going to shake out. But this top three right here seems like what Carlos Mendoza is rolling with, at least to start the season off and get a feel for how the combination does. Tyrone Taylor is getting the start today in center field. Jose Siri, his counterpart, who he will be splitting time with, presumably in center field, has been doing a tremendous job in spring training. A couple of home runs under his belt as well, especially that monstrous shot against the Boston Red Sox. But we are seeing Tyrone Taylor batting fifth, playing center field in tonight's ball game. And Luis Torrens getting the catching duties behind the plate, batting sixth tonight. Luis Torrens is such an underrated name, and that's why I have a star right next to his name. His OPS is about 870 this spring, and he's batting 417. He's spraying the ball to opposite field, pull side, gap to gap. He's having a really, really solid spring, and I think that he is one of the more underrated players on the New York Mets going into the season that's going to be making regular or semi-regular contributions more so than people actually know. Now, I'm not saying anything about Francisco Alvarez and his status as the full-time catcher. Francisco Alvarez is definitely going to be the full-time catcher and the opening day catcher. But we know that the catching position is grueling, especially over the course of 162, especially now that we understand Starling Marte is still dealing with some of that knee soreness. So if there has to be a double catcher lineup, right, where you have Francisco Alvarez DHing and Luis Torrens starting behind the plate to give Francisco Alvarez a day off of his, feet, that's something that we can definitely see more often than not, especially if Luis Torrens' bat continues to produce the way that it has when he first joined the Mets in his first couple of months as a New York Met last season and in spring training, because again, those numbers do not lie. He is hitting the ball very well. Donovan Walton is batting seventh, playing second base in that tandem up the middle with Francisco Lindor. DHing is Chris Williams batting eighth, and Jose Azocar is batting ninth, playing left field. But again, all eyes have to be tonight on Kodai Senga, who has been taking his regimen pretty slow in terms of the offseason pitching plan that he had and the throwing sessions that he was kind of progressing into and trying to ramp up, as we've seen, throwing live batting practice to New York Mets hitters on the field throughout spring training, but they were really trying to take it slow. We can only assume, especially after the multitude of injuries that piled up in the rotation so far with Frankie Montas first and then Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga is finally approaching that game-ready situation, but they're not going to extend him. Whatever happens in the first inning is what happens, and should he run into some trouble tonight, there's going to be a pitch limit for Kodai Senga. It doesn't matter if he finishes that first inning or not. Health and escaping spring training with health at this point, given the problems in the rotation that the Mets are going into come opening day, is something that the Mets have to prioritize. But these are the latest pitching updates from the New York Mets. As Anthony DiComo has us covered per usual, Kodai Senga will make his Grapefruit League debut tomorrow night. This was tweeted out yesterday, of course, against the Marlins for one inning. David Peterson will enter after that in the second inning. Senga is heading to a backfield to throw the rest of his pitches after the first inning, should he still have some pitches to throw. Let's say that he escapes the first inning very quickly and he has the rest of his pitch count or pitch limit to meet. He's going to be going to the backfield and throwing the rest of his pitches. So that's what Anthony DiComo wanted to state there. But another key update from Anthony DiComo: AJ Minter, who is dealing with that hip injury to close the 2024 season, newly acquired AJ Minter on that 2-year deal to bring him to Queens through live batting practice for the first time today since his surgery. And again, this was tweeted yesterday. I'm a day late, and I do apologize about that, but this was from March 2nd. And some things to note here: there was some loud contact from the bats of Drew Gilbert, Joey Meneses, and Pete Alonso against AJ Minter, but he also did have some swing and miss stuff, especially cracking the bat of Starling Marte, whatever that means. I'm assuming that it means that he broke Starling Marte's bat. And it's also good at the same time knowing that the injury updates that we've been receiving from Starling Marte are a little bit concerning surrounding that knee. It's good that he's finally going in there and starting to hit live batting practice on the field as well, because between the situation that I just mentioned with Francisco Alvarez potentially getting some DH reps this season, as well as Alexander Canario, who we've seen a couple of times in spring training here for the Mets following that trade with the Cubs to bring him over here to the New York Mets organization. These are some situations that could be contingency plans should there be anything wrong with Starling Marte come opening day. Again, we are all holding out hope that his knee holds up, especially on a platoon basis for the majority of this season. But at this stage of his career, especially when he's been dealing with said knee soreness since the summer of 2024, it's a simple question mark at this point. And also some Mets related news around the league: that Jose Quintana, according to John Heyman, who owns the Brewers, after posting 6 scoreless innings in a crucial Game 3 of the wild card last season in that Mets vs. Brewers series, agrees to a deal, a 1-year deal with the Brew Crew. Now, as I'm recording this, I do not have the actual number in terms of what the salary is going to be. I'm very curious about that, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in the post game as well between Rob and myself. But again, Jose Quintana was a guy that I wanted back. A lot of Mets fans wanted him back, especially after some of the guys in this rotation, Manaea and Montas, went down. Dealing with the internal route versus the external route. Are you going to rely on Tyler McGill? Are you going to rely on a guy like Paul Blackburn, who just had a rough outing against the Boston Red Sox his last time out, who I still believe in? I don't think that outing is anything indicative in terms of how his season's going to go. But again, with his back injury, how's that going to hold up? Are you going to rely on a guy like Max Kranick, who has had a very strong start to spring training, make a regular contribution until your rotation gets healthy? Jose Quintana seemed like the obvious answer. It was clear that the Mets, for whatever reason, whether it wasn't a fit with the organization at the time or whether they really didn't want to spend that extra money that had luxury tax penalty implications, Jose Quintana is going to the Brewers on a 1-year deal, and Mets fans who wanted him back, that dream is officially over. And I'm still trying to process that because, again, I've made multiple videos about the Mets. pretty much needing to go and get Jose Quintana, but it's clear that they went and, chose not to go down that route, which is quite simply okay. Now we have to talk about internal options. For better or for worse, we will see how those internal options pan out. But again, Mets fans, this has been the True Mets Talk pregame. That's all I have for you all. Not an extensive video. We'll have more for you all tonight on the postgame, and we will be talking about the recap of Mets versus Marlins tonight, 6:10 p.m. First pitch. See you all later on the channel for the post game. Peace.